Hello everybody, welcome to my channel. Welcome. This is Scott's Comics Retro Review. Now I understand if you think the name's too long, I get it. You can shorten it however you want it. But this channel is dedicated to those who want to get into comic books, but they're not sure where to start, or they're into comic books and they just haven't read the books that I'm currently reviewing. And this video is a video that I did not want to make. So let me explain what happened, right? I had recently done a series of videos on Superman, and particularly the John Byrne's handling of Superman. And I kind of went off on a rant about Lois Lane, and I was saying that modern comic books are bad because they do the character out of character. And that's just one of the reasons why I don't buy a lot of modern comic books. And I also did a video on the real Captain Marvel, and a friend of mine and I got into talking and was asking why I didn't do any more modern type reviews, even though this is called retro review. But never mind that. It's because I'm not that great with the old, the new creators. And when people kind of ask me what it is, I kind of say that you have characters that look like characters. They're called the characters, but they don't act like the characters. And it's almost like somebody dresses up like you and they're running around calling themselves you. Well, they're not going to act like you, even if they kind of resemble you. And that's part of my problem with this. So what happened was Grant Morrison happens to be one of those creators that started this trend towards writing people out of character. And there's a number of other reasons why I'm not a big fan of Grant Morrison. His work, I mean. I don't know the man personally, so I don't want to attack him personally. But, when I say that I don't really buy Grant Morrison's work. I don't follow his work. I don't really particularly like it. They say to me, have you read Invisibles? As if I don't know what I'm talking about. Well, yes, I have read Invisibles. I've got the entire series right here, and I've read them all. And then I start explaining why I wasn't a big fan of it. And a lot of times they come back and go, have you read Animal Man? And yes, I've got his entire run right here. I've read it. It's not like I'm just making stuff up. And then what happens is sometimes people will go towards the Doom Patrol. And it's true, I never read the Doom Patrol. And part of the reason why is I was waiting for DC to start reprinting all of the Doom Patrol before I started reading it. And this was back when I was still kind of giving Mr. Morrison a chance. I had heard a lot of good stuff about his writing. So, I always give people a chance. I want to read and see what they're saying. But by the time they got around to securing all the rights to reprinting Doom Patrol, and I believe the character called Flex Mentalo was the main reason why they couldn't get everything printed. In either case, by the time they got around to reprinting it, I had decided I wasn't going to buy any more of Grant Morrison's work. But if they don't go to Doom Patrol, then they go to, have you read JLA? Well, yes, I have JLA right here. I have his entire run. It's true that even his last book, or I think that's the last one. I think this was done maybe in the middle of the series. I don't exactly remember, but I put it last as a final cap. Obviously, I didn't pick up the initial run because this is a trade paperback of it, but I had heard so much about it that I said, let me give this guy a chance. And that's when I started buying Grant Morrison's work. And then I started explaining why I didn't really like his work that much. And again, they come back to me and they say, well, have you read his X-Men run? Grasshopper, you have me there. I do have his X-Men run, except I don't have the entire run. This was the last issue. I stopped buying Grant Morrison at that point and decided I wasn't going to. And you may say to me, why? Why Grasshopper? Why do you do that? Well, let me give you an example, okay? by the time Grant Morrison got to the X-Men, he was a huge star, right? When he says, hey, people kind of trembled and listened to what he said because his name on a book sold a lot of books. So obviously, you want to make him happy so he can write well for you, okay? In this case, he wanted to come onto the X-Men, and he had a couple of ideas on what he wanted to do, okay? And one of the things he wanted to do was, let me show you this real quick. This is the Beast on the X-Men, okay? This is the first issue of the first X-Men ever, and this is the Beast. He was called the Beast because he had big hands and big feet. Then he later evolved, okay? He became a big furry creature. And I meant to grab a better issue, but I didn't. He became a big furry creature, okay? And he was more, let me show you a later one. I wanted to show you this after, but I can show you this now. He wanted to become a more, there was a reason behind it, but he ended up becoming this blue furry character. And it was more ape-like, had long arms and short legs, that kind of thing. And Grant Morrison had seen a play called Beauty and the Beast. And this, by the way, is not Grant Morrison. And in Beauty and the Beast, what happened was the creature called the Beast in that play was more cat-like. And again, I don't know if it's the play or if it was the TV series, but in either case, the Beast in those shows, the play and the series, was more cat-like. So he decided he was going to make the Beast more cat-like. Why? That Beast has nothing to do with this Beast. They're two different sorry, I didn't mean to hit the camera. They're two different entities. Why would you do that? So they came up with what's known as a secondary evolution. By the way, look at this beautiful art by Ethan Van Sciver. Anyway, look, he's more cat-like. He's acting cat-like, and he has 4 fingers and toes. In the original X-Men, he had all 5. It was just that it was too big. And then when he became blue and furry, he kept the number of fingers and toes, but they made him do this. And then what happened was I pulled this other X-Men to show you. I should have kept the page. I shouldn't have. But after Grant Morrison left, they went right back to the correct number of fingers and toes, and he's back to being more ape-like, which I guess shows you how the rest of Marvel thought about, his creation or what he did. And he called it a secondary evolution. And what happened is it wasn't all the characters that got this secondary evolution. It was the Beast because of this play, and he wanted to do Colossus. He wanted to have Colossus in his videos. But at the time, Marvel was saying dead is dead, and you can't have Colossus because Colossus is dead. And then, of course, 2 years later, they bring back Colossus, which I disagree with Marvel for doing stuff like that. But in either case, that, by the way, is also not a Grant Morrison book. But what he did was he took Emma Frost, who's also known as the White Queen, and he turned her into diamonds. And I'm thinking to myself, why would you turn her into diamonds? She's one of the most powerful telepaths out there. She doesn't need that diamond power because her telepathy could do it all. In either case, I didn't finish the series. I got to the point where Professor X, as a fetus in his mother's womb, strangled his twin sister, and I was like, yeah, I'm kind of done with this. I don't want to read the rest of it. And I'm kind of glad I didn't, because he ended up killing Jean Grey, for which I don't think I could forgive him for. I mean, she's back now, but it took a long time before she came back, over a decade, I think. Anyway, I was telling my friend this years ago, and he was asking me, have you read All-Star Superman? And I said no, and I told him that I'm no longer reading Grant Morrison's work. And he handed me an issue. It wasn't this one. It was issue number 3. This is one I picked up free later. And again, I go back. I give people chances. It's not like I just, I don't give people chances. But I went back to read this. And of course, Frank Quietly, who worked with Grant Morrison on a lot of series, including that X-Men, he's got some beautiful artwork in here. And this was essentially a love letter to Silver Age Superman. It didn't have anything to do with continuity. But the issue he gave me was number 3. And the problem with number 3 is you had Superman goes to Lois Lane and he gets her a potion that gives her his powers for 24 hours. And he goes, all right, now let me take you around to show you how to use your powers because you don't know how to use it. And she was like, okay. And they end up going to, before they take off to use the powers, a guy called Samson shows up. Now, I don't know why Grant Morrison picked Samson. To me, he wasn't really powerful enough to stand toe-to-toe with Superman. He should have gone with Hercules. That would have been more plausible. But in either case, the two of them end up in a pissing contest. Now, so far, we've picked Samson, who shouldn't have been there against Superman, and then we've got Superman, who's acting like kind of like a child in a pissing contest with Samson for Lois Lane's affections. And I don't believe Superman would have done that. But the worst of all was Lois Lane. She stood around until the 24 hours wore off, and then she couldn't use her powers. Now, I kind of understand where Morrison was going with that. However, I disagree with that because Lois Lane would have just taken off. In my rant with Superman, when I did the Lois Lane rant with Superman, I talked about how John Byrne did it right. Well, Morrison was doing it wrong. That was not Lois Lane. She would not have stood there. Now, what the book should have been about was that Lois was going to take off anyway. If you're doing a love letter to the Silver Age, that would actually have made more sense. She takes off, and then she doesn't know how to use her powers, so she causes these mishaps behind her, and Superman has to come up behind her and clean up. That would have made a lot more sense. And he had to be delayed, so you get a guy like Hercules to kind of delay him. If you want to use Samson, whatever. But that's the reason why I didn't, I think my friend wanted me to just read it and go, wow, this is great. But I didn't. Now, I want to tell you, those of you who love Grant Morrison's work, this is an example of what you love in Grant Morrison's work. This was a series, DC Comics Presents, and what it was it was a tribute to Julius Schwartz. Julius Schwartz used to take covers. He used to have a cover drawn, and he used to have writers write around the concept. And they did a whole series of it, as a tribute because Julie was leaving. So they took some of his old covers and they just had them redone, and then they had the writers write new stories around it. And Grant Morrison got this one. He only had 12 pages to tell the story. And this is not the right story, sorry. This is the right one. He only had 12 pages to tell a story, and he had to write the story around this cover concept. And that, to me, is where Grant Morrison's genius comes out. It was beautiful. It's one of my favorite short stories in comic books ever. And it's written by Grant Morrison, who I don't particularly like. And the reason why is because I don't think people know how to edit him. Like I said, he's a big star, and when he writes something, people don't want to come in and say, you need to kind of do this instead. So they just kind of let him get away with things. Now, the title of this is The Beginning of the End, because he was a superstar. He started in the 90s, and he started writing these characters out of character. And now the younger people coming up are reading this going, wow, this is great. And they start writing characters out of character. And this is why you have so many of the superhero characters today out of character, not acting the way they're supposed to act. And it comes down to Grant Morrison and his writing. And that's the reason why I don't follow him and why I don't read a lot of modern day comics. So I hope you liked the video. If you did, please like, subscribe, share, and comment below. Let me know what you think. I know a lot of you are going to say that, I'm crazy because, Grant Morrison wrote these great works of art. And what I'm saying is he can write, but because he does stuff like this, it was, to me, in my opinion, the beginning of the end for modern comics. So thank you very much. You have a great day. This is Scott Rideshare. I'm sorry, this is Scott's Comics Retro Review.